The snow had been falling for 3 hours when the little girl finally stopped running. Her name was Emma Grace Sullivan. She was 5 years old, and she was dying. Not dramatically, not all at once. Just the slow, creeping kind of death that comes when a child walks barefoot through a Colorado blizzard in nothing but a thin pink dress and broken shoes. The kind of death that whispers instead of screams. The kind that feels like falling asleep. She pulled her small suitcase behind her. Pink plastic chipped at the corners, one wheel wobbling with every step. Inside were the only things that mattered anymore. A change of clothes that didn't fit right. Half a peanut butter sandwich wrapped in a paper towel. A drawing she'd made of a house with flowers by the door. And a photograph, creased from being held too many times, of a woman with kind eyes who wasn't coming back. In her other arm, pressed tight against her chest, was a white stuffed bunny named Lucky. The fur was matted now, soaked through with melting snow, but she wouldn't let go, couldn't let go. It was the last thing her mother had given her before the hospital, before the machine stopped beeping, before everything went quiet. The wind bit through her dress like teeth. Her lips had turned the color of bruises. Her small fingers, wrapped around Lucky's ear, had stopped feeling anything at all. She didn't know where she was going. She only knew she couldn't go back. Behind her, somewhere in the storm, a door had slammed. A woman's voice had screamed words that still echoed in her head. Words like burden, mistake, waste of space, the smell of wine and cigarettes, the sound of glass breaking, then the cold shock of being pushed outside into the night. Emma had grabbed her suitcase and run. Now, 3 miles down a mountain highway with no streetlights and no houses and no help, she finally understood what her mother had meant when she said angels don't have wings. They're just people who stop when you need them. She whispered into the storm, her voice so small it disappeared into the wind. Mommy said you'd send help. Please hurry. I'm so cold. The snow didn't answer. It never did. It just kept falling, burying her footprints as fast as she made them, erasing every trace that she'd ever been there at all. Her legs wobbled, her vision blurred. She took one more step, then another. Then her knee buckled and she went down hard on the frozen asphalt. The suitcase tipped over. The bunny slipped from her grasp. She reached for it, fingers scraping ice, but her arms wouldn't work right anymore. Everything felt heavy, slow, far away. The last thing she saw before her eyes closed was Lucky lying in the snow 3 feet away, one ear reaching toward her like it was trying to hold on. The last thing she thought was that maybe heaven wasn't so bad if Mommy was there. The last thing she heard was the distant rumble of an engine. Then nothing. Just white silence and the soft hiss of snow covering everything. 48 miles south, in a world that felt 1,000 years away from that frozen highway, James Brennan sat behind the wheel of his truck and wondered when he'd stop feeling anything at all. People called him Jim. Had since he was a kid. Never James. That was his father's name, and his father had been the kind of man who made you afraid of your own shadow. So Jim it was. Jim the builder. Jim the businessman. Jim who built Brennan Lodges from nothing but sweat and stubbornness and a bone-deep determination to never be poor again. 48 years old, self-made, successful by any reasonable measure, 10 properties across Colorado, enough money in the bank to retire tomorrow if he wanted to, and completely, utterly alone. He drove an F-150, 12 years old, paint faded from mountain weather. Could have bought something newer, fancier. Could have afforded one of those luxury SUVs with heated leather seats and wood trim. But this truck had been with him since the beginning. Since the days when he was framing houses for other people's dreams and saving every dollar to buy his first rundown motel. The radio played old country music, George Strait, Alan Jackson, songs about love and loss and roads that go on forever. Jim didn't sing along, he just drove, watching snowflakes spiral through his headlights like memories that wouldn't stay buried. He was coming back from the mountain property, his newest acquisition, a ski lodge that had been failing under the previous owner but was already turning profit under his management. He'd spent the day walking through rooms, checking maintenance logs, talking to staff, doing what he always did, working, moving, staying busy enough that he didn't have to think about the empty house waiting for him in Denver. 3 years since the divorce. 3 years since Sarah had finally said what they both knew, that he was too closed off, too damaged, too scared of letting anyone in. She'd wanted children. He'd said no, not because he didn't want them, but because he was terrified he'd turn into his father, that the poison in his blood would pass down to another generation. That history would repeat itself in small hands and frightened eyes. So she'd left, found someone warmer, more open, more willing to build a future instead of just running from the past. Last he heard, she was pregnant, happy, everything she deserved. And Jim was here, driving through a snowstorm, going home to an empty house, another hotel room that just happened to have his name on the deed. Another day, another dollar, and another empty existence of building things but never a home. He turned the heat up. The truck's heater groaned, pushing warm air through vents that smelled like motor oil and old coffee. Outside, the storm was getting worse. Visibility dropping, snow piling up on the sides of the road. He should pull over, wait it out. That was the smart thing to do. But Jim kept driving because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering. And remembering meant feeling all the things he'd spent 48 years trying to bury. The wind howled. The wipers scraped across the windshield in a rhythm like a heartbeat. Slow, steady, mechanical. Then his headlights caught something. A shape. Small. Dark against the white. At first, Jim thought it was a deer. They wandered onto the highway sometimes, especially in storms. But as he got closer, his brain started rejecting what his eyes were seeing. Not a deer. Too small. Wrong shape. His foot moved to the brake before his mind fully understood. A child. A little girl. Lying in the road. Not moving. Time slowed down in that sick, lurching way it does when your whole world tilts sideways. Jim's heart slammed against his ribs. The truck skidded, tires fighting for grip on ice. He cranked the wheel, pumped the brakes. The F-150 fishtailed, sliding, spinning, finally grinding to a stop 10 feet from where she lay. For a moment, Jim just sat there, breathing hard, hands locked on the steering wheel, staring through the windshield at the impossible thing in front of him. A child, 5 years old, maybe 6, wearing a pink dress in a blizzard, alone. His first thought was clear and cold and logical. This isn't your problem. Call 911. Stay in the truck. Let professionals handle it. His second thought was a memory so sharp it cut. Himself at 8 years old, locked outside in the snow by his father. Punishment for some small infraction he couldn't even remember now. Wearing pajamas, bare feet on ice, begging through the door. Please let me back in. Please, I'm sorry. I'll be good. His father's voice through the wood, slurred with whiskey. Pain builds character, boy. Stop crying like a little girl. Jim had curled up on the porch, shaking so hard his teeth cracked together, praying someone would come. A neighbor, a stranger, an angel. No one ever did. He'd survived because his mother had finally opened the door after his father passed out. But the cold had stayed with him. Not just in his body, deeper than that, in the place where trust was supposed to live. Now, 40 years later, Jim looked at the small shape in the road and understood something fundamental. This was the moment, the one that defined everything, the choice between the man he'd become and the man he could have been if someone had stopped for him. He turned off the engine, opened the door, stepped out into the storm. The wind hit him like a fist. Snow stung his face, his hands, every inch of exposed skin. The temperature had to be in the teens, maybe lower with the wind chill. He moved toward her, boots crunching through fresh powder, and with every step his chest got tighter. She wasn't moving. Please be alive. Please. He knelt beside her. The snow soaked through his jeans instantly, cold burning against his knees. Up close, he could see she was even smaller than he'd thought. Tiny, fragile. Her skin had gone pale, lips tinged blue. One arm was stretched out, fingers curled like she'd been reaching for something. 3 feet away, half buried in snow, was a white stuffed bunny. Jim's throat closed. He touched her shoulder, gentle as he could. Hey, can you hear me? Nothing. He pressed 2 fingers to her neck, feeling for a pulse. It was there. Faint, too slow, but there, she was alive. He didn't think, didn't plan, just moved. Scooped her up in his arms, surprised by how little she weighed. Like holding air. like holding nothing at all. Her head lolled against his chest. Her breath came in shallow, rattling gasps. He grabbed the bunny with his free hand, then turned and half ran, half stumbled back to the truck, yanked open the passenger door, laid her across the seat as carefully as he could. She was soaked through, shivering in a way that looked wrong, like her body was fighting itself. He cranked the heat to maximum, grabbed his work jacket from behind the seat, a heavy Carhartt canvas, and draped it over her. It swallowed her completely. Then he just stood there in the open door, snow blowing in, staring at the small, broken thing he had just pulled from the road. What was he supposed to do? Hospital. Obviously, but the nearest one was 20 miles back the way he'd come, and in this storm it would take twice as long to get there. The girl stirred. A soft whimper escaped her lips. Her eyes fluttered but didn't open. Jim climbed into the driver's seat, pulled the door shut, and turned the heat vents toward her. The truck filled with the sound of the blower and her labored breathing. Then her eyes did open, just barely, unfocused, blue, the color of winter sky. She looked at him, didn't seem scared, just tired. So tired. Her voice came out as barely a whisper. "Are you the angel?" Jim's chest cracked open. He didn't know what to say, didn't know how to answer that. Finally, he managed, "No, kid, just a guy with a truck." She blinked slowly. "Mommy said angels come when you're cold." He swallowed hard. "Yeah, your mommy sounds smart. She's in heaven now." The words landed like stones. Jim reached out, pulled the jacket tighter around her shoulders. "I'm sorry, sweetheart." She clutched the bunny against her chest with both hands. "Don't make me go back. Please." And there it was, the same words he'd said 40 years ago, the exact same plea. Something in Jim's DNA recognized the terror in her voice. The bone-deep knowledge that going back meant pain, meant fear, meant being small and helpless while the world chewed you up. He looked at her, really looked, and saw the bruises on her upper arms, fingerprint-shaped, adult-sized. Saw the way she flinched when he moved his hand too fast. Saw the resignation in her eyes, like she'd already learned not to expect kindness. His voice came out rough. "I won't, kid. I promise." She studied his face for a long moment, then slowly her eyes drifted closed again. Her breathing evened out. Not sleep exactly, more like her body was shutting down from exhaustion and cold and relief. Jim sat there with his hand on her shoulder, feeling her breathe, and made a decision that would change both their lives. He put the truck in drive and headed not toward the hospital, but toward the only place he had ever felt safe, the First Brennan Lodge, where it all began, where Martha Hayes still worked the night shift, where maybe, just maybe, he could figure out what to do before he handed this broken child to a system that might break her even more. The storm swallowed them as they drove. Two lost souls in a truck, heading towards something neither of them understood yet, but both of them needed. Salvation, maybe, or just a chance to start over. The 24-hour gas station appeared out of the snow like a mirage, fluorescent lights harsh against the dark, a beacon of civilization in the wilderness. Jim pulled in, engine still running, and looked at the girl sleeping in his passenger seat. She'd been quiet the whole drive. 20 minutes of silence, except for the heater and the wipers and the crunch of tires on ice. He'd glanced over every few seconds, checking to make sure she was still breathing. Still there, still real. Now he had a choice to make. Go inside, get supplies, leave her in the truck, or wake her up, bring her with him, risk questions he wasn't ready to answer. He decided on the first option. Locked the doors, kept the engine running for heat, moved fast. The clerk behind the counter was maybe 25, bored, playing on his phone. He barely looked up. Jim came in. Jim grabbed what he needed without thinking too hard about it. Hot chocolate from the machine. The instant kind that came out of a dispenser but was warm and sweet and better than nothing. A package of beef jerky, crackers, a bottle of water, a cheap blanket from the automotive section. At the counter, the clerk rang him up without comment. "Rough night to be out." "Yeah." Jim paid cash, took the bag, headed back out into the cold. The girl was awake when he got back. Sitting up now, the jacket still wrapped around her, eyes wide and alert, watching him through the windshield like she was deciding whether to run. He climbed in, set the bag between them. Got you something warm to drink. She didn't move, just stared. Jim pulled the hot chocolate from the fron, popped the lid, steam rising. It's okay, I'm not going to hurt you. Slowly, carefully, she reached out, took the cup in both hands, brought it to her lips, and took a tiny sip. Then another. Her eyes closed and she made a sound that was almost a sigh. Good? She nodded. They sat in silence while she drank. Jim opened the jerky, tore off a piece, offered it. She took it hesitantly, chewed slowly, like she wasn't sure if it was allowed, like someone might take it away. That's when Jim noticed how thin she was under the dress, ribs visible, cheeks hollow. This wasn't just cold and scared. This was hungry. This was neglected. His jaw tightened. He kept his voice gentle. What's your name, sweetheart? She looked down at the hot chocolate. Emma Grace Sullivan. That's a real pretty name. I'm Jim. Mr. Jim? Just Jim is fine. She took another sip. Where are you going? Good question. Somewhere safe. Somewhere warm. Then we'll figure out the rest. Figure out what? Where you belong. Her face crumpled. I don't belong anywhere anymore. Jim felt something twist in his chest. Why do you say that? Because Mommy's gone, and Aunt Sharon doesn't want me. Who's Aunt Sharon? She's my mommy's sister. I live with her now, but she gets mad a lot. Jim's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Mad how? Emma pulled the jacket tighter. When she drinks, she yells. Sometimes she trailed off, looking down. Sometimes she what? Grabs me too hard, locks me in the closet when her friends come over. Says I'm in the way. The words came out flat, matter of fact, like this was just how the world worked. Jim wanted to put his fist through something. Instead, he took a slow breath. Is that where you were tonight? With Aunt Sharon? Emma nodded. I spilled her wine. It was an accident. I said sorry, but she said I ruined everything. She said, get out. So I got my suitcase and I left. Where were you going? I don't know, just away. Jim looked at this tiny, brave, broken child who'd walked 3 miles through a blizzard because anywhere was better than home. Who'd almost died because the person supposed to protect her had thrown her away like trash. He thought about calling the police right then, but he'd seen how that went. Seen kids return to bad situations because the system was overwhelmed and underfunded, and there weren't enough good homes for all the broken children. Seen kids like him sent back to fathers who shouldn't have been fathers at all. So instead, he made another choice. You hungry for real food, not just jerky? She nodded, eyes wide. Okay, we'll get you fed, get you warm, then we'll talk about what comes next. That sound good? You're not taking me back to Aunt Sharon? Not tonight. What about tomorrow? Jim met her eyes. Let's just worry about tonight first, okay? She studied him for a long moment, then quietly, okay. He put the truck back in gear and drove. Behind them, the gas station faded into the storm. Ahead, somewhere in the darkened snow, was the place Jim had been running from his whole life. The place where everything started. The place where maybe, just maybe, something new could begin. The pink suitcase had fallen open at some point. Jim noticed it when he glanced in the rearview mirror. Contents spilled across the back seat. Not much. A change of clothes, worn and stained. A child's drawing in crayon. A sandwich wrapped in paper towel that had seen better days. And a photograph. It had slipped out onto the floor, face up, visible in the dome light. Jim shouldn't have looked, should have kept his eyes on the road. But something about the way it lay there, like it was waiting to be found, made him glance down. Then he had to look again because his brain wasn't processing what he was seeing. He pulled over, put the truck in park, reached back and picked up the photograph. The world tilted. The photo showed a young woman, late 20s maybe, with dark hair and a warm smile. She was holding a toddler on her hip. They stood in front of a building Jim knew better than his own face. The original Brennan Lodge. Small, 20 rooms. The place his mother had opened before the cancer took her. Before Jim had expanded it into 10 properties. Before success had replaced grief. But it wasn't the building that made his hands shake. It was the woman. She was wearing a staff uniform, name tag visible even in the faded photo. Caroline. Jim flipped the picture over. Handwritten on the back, in looping script, were words that hit him like a freight train. To Martha, thank you for giving us a home when we had none. Love, Caroline and Emma. Emma, he looked at the girl in his passenger seat. She was watching him with those two old eyes. That's my mommy, she said softly. Jim's throat was too tight to speak. He managed, Caroline Sullivan. Yes, did you know her? Know her. The word was too small. Carolyn had worked for him. Years ago, back when he was still hands-on with the first property, before he'd hired managers and moved into the corporate side. She'd been one of Martha's hires. Sweet girl, Martha had said. Single mom, works hard, needs a break. Jim had barely noticed her. Too busy building, too focused on profits and expansion and running from his past. He remembered a smile, a quiet competence, a child in the break room sometimes, coloring while mom finished her shift. Then he'd expanded, moved on, lost touch with the day-to-day. Martha had stayed to run the original property, but Jim had stopped coming around as much, stopped knowing the staff, stopped being part of the small human moments that made a business more than numbers on a spreadsheet. And Caroline had just been another employee who'd eventually moved on. Except she hadn't just moved on. She'd died and left behind this. Jim looked at Emma with new understanding. Your mom worked at my lodge. The one in the picture. She loved it there. She said Miss Martha was like a grandma to us. Martha, of course. Martha who'd been with him from the start, who'd known his mother, who'd watched Jim go from a scared kid with bruises to a man with walls so high nothing could get in. Martha who'd probably known about Caroline's death and tried to tell him, but he'd been too busy to listen. When did your mom... He couldn't finish the question. 8 months ago, February. She got really sick. The doctors tried, but she kept getting worse. Then one day she just went to sleep. 8 months, not even a year. This child had lost her mother 8 months ago and ended up with an aunt who hurt her, and tonight had nearly frozen to death on a mountain highway. All while Jim had been building hotels and closing deals and pretending his success meant he'd outrun his past. He thought about all the times Martha had called. Hey, Jim, got a minute? Need to talk to you about something. And he'd said, not now. Martha, I'm busy. We'll talk later. Later never came. Emma touched the photograph, fingers gentle on her mother's face. She used to tell me stories about working there, about Miss Martha teaching her how to fold sheets the fancy way, about the nice man who owned it, but was always sad. Jim's chest hurt. The nice man? You. She said you had kind eyes, but you looked lonely. She wondered why. He didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to explain that loneliness was safer than connection. That walls kept pain out, but also kept everything else out too. Emma tucked the photograph back into the bunny's hiding spot, somewhere inside the stuffing, where it would be safe. Miss Martha really still works there? Yeah, night shift. Can we see her? Jim looked at the clock. Almost midnight. Martha would be at the desk, doing paperwork, probably wondering why the hell the owner was calling this late. He pulled out his phone, dialed. She answered on the second ring. Jim, what's wrong? Her first assumption was always that something was wrong. Maybe because in 48 years, Jim had never called just to talk. Martha, I need you to meet me at the lodge. Now, in this storm? I'm 10 minutes out, please. She heard something in his voice. What happened? I found Caroline Sullivan's daughter in the snow, alone. Silence then soft and broken. Sweet Jesus, is she okay? Jim looked at Emma, small and scared and trusting him with her life. She will be. But Martha, Caroline died 8 months ago. I know, I tried to tell you, you said you were too busy. The words were a knife, true and sharp and deserved. I know, I'm sorry, but right now Emma needs help. I need your help. Where is she supposed to be? With her aunt, Sharon something. Martha's sharp intake of breath told him she knew the name. Sharon Crawford. You know her? Came to Caroline's funeral. Drunk. Made a scene. Caroline never talked about her family much, but I got the sense there was bad blood there. Emma says Sharon hurts her. Another silence. Longer this time. When Martha spoke again, her voice was steel. "Bring her here. I'll make room 7 ready." Room 7, the family room, the one with 2 beds and a small kitchen, the one they kept for emergencies. "Thanks, Martha. Don't thank me yet. We're going to have to figure out what to do come morning." "I know. And Jim?" "Yeah. Whatever you're thinking, be careful. The system doesn't like it when people try to be heroes." He looked at Emma, who'd fallen asleep against the window, exhausted and fragile and so very small. "I'm not trying to be a hero, Martha. I'm just trying to do what someone should have done for me." He hung up before she could respond, put the truck in drive, and headed toward the only place that had ever felt like home. The snow kept falling. The road kept disappearing under white. But for the first time in 3 years, maybe longer, Jim Brennan wasn't driving away from something. He was driving toward it. Whatever came next, whatever price he'd have to pay, whatever battle he'd have to fight, he was ready. Because the little girl asleep in his truck, clutching a bunny named Lucky and dreaming of a mother who called him the nice man with kind eyes, had just become the most important thing in his world. And Jim Brennan, who'd spent 48 years running from love because he was afraid of becoming his father, had just learned something his father never understood. Real strength wasn't about building walls. It was about knowing when to tear them down. The original Brennan Lodge sat at the edge of town like a memory refusing to fade. 20 rooms, single story, built in the 70s with brown siding and yellow trim that had weathered into something softer over the years. Not fancy, not the kind of place that would ever make a magazine cover, but solid, real. The kind of motel where truckers and traveling salesmen and families on tight budgets knew they'd get a clean bed and honest value. Jim's mother had opened it in 1998 with money borrowed from every relative who'd listen and a dream bigger than her bank account. She'd called it Brennan Lodge because she wanted the name to mean something. Wanted people to know a Brennan stood behind the product, that their word was good. She died 3 years later, cancer eating through her faster than the doctors could slow it down. Jim had been 19, angry, lost, working construction during the day and running the motel at night, learning the business through sheer necessity because the alternative was losing the one thing his mother had built. He'd thought about selling it 100 times in those early years, but something always stopped him. Maybe stubbornness, maybe grief, maybe the ghost of his mother's voice saying a Brennan doesn't quit. So he'd kept it, improved it, then bought another property, and then another, built an empire on the foundation she'd laid. But he always kept this one, the first one. And he always kept Martha Hayes. She was waiting on the porch when Jim pulled up. 62 years old, silver hair pulled back in a bun, wearing a cardigan over her work shirt despite the cold. She'd been his mother's best friend, had held Jim when he cried at the funeral, had taught him how to balance books and deal with difficult customers and see the humanity in every person who walked through the door. She was the closest thing to family he had left. Martha's eyes went straight to the passenger seat, to the small shape bundled in Jim's work jacket. Her hand went to her mouth. Jim killed the engine, opened his door. The cold hit like a wall, but he barely felt it. He moved around to the passenger side, opened that door carefully, and gathered Emma into his arms. She stirred but didn't wake, just made a small sound and pressed her face against his shoulder. Martha met him at the bottom of the porch steps. Up close in the yellow light from the office, Jim could see tears on her cheeks. "Oh, honey," she whispered, not to Jim, to the child in his arms. "Oh, sweet girl. Room 7 ready?" "Everything. Fresh sheets, heat on high, soup warming on the stove." They moved inside together. The office smelled like coffee and lemon cleaning solution and something baking. Martha always kept cookies on hand for late check-ins. Said a warm cookie made people feel welcome. She led the way down the exterior corridor, keys jingling, to the last room on the end, the family room. She unlocked it and pushed the door open. Warmth poured out. The heater hummed in the corner. 2 double beds with thick quilts. A small kitchenette with a hot plate and mini fridge. Cheerful yellow curtains that Martha had sewn herself. Simple but comfortable. Safe. Jim laid Emma on the nearest bed. She sank into the mattress with a sigh, still clutching Lucky. He pulled the quilt up over her shoulders, tucked it in around her small frame. Martha stood in the doorway watching. When Jim finally looked up, her expression was complicated, sad and angry and fiercely protective all at once. "Tell me," she said quietly. So he did. Standing in that small, warm room while Emma slept, Jim told Martha everything. Finding her in the road, the bruises, the aunt who drank and yelled and locked her in closets, the photograph, Carolyn's death 8 months ago. When he finished, Martha walked to the bed and sat on the edge. She brushed a strand of hair from Emma's forehead with a touch so gentle it made Jim's throat tight. "Carolyn was special," Martha said. "Worked here 6 years. Started when Emma was just a baby. Used to bring her in sometimes when she couldn't find a sitter. Emma would color in the office while Caroline cleaned rooms. I barely remember her. You were busy building. Can't build an empire and notice every employee." "Maybe I should have." Martha looked at him. "Maybe. But you're here now. That counts for something." "What do I do, Martha? Come morning, I have to call someone. Child services, the police, someone. And they'll take her. Yeah. Back to the aunt, probably. Unless we can prove abuse. The bruises are already healing. I can see them fading from here. And a 5-year-old's testimony against her legal guardian?" Martha shook her head. "System doesn't work that way, Jim. You know that." He did know, had lived it. The social worker who'd come to his house when he was 10, after a teacher noticed bruises. His father, charming and apologetic. "Just fell, officer. Clumsy kid. Me and the boy, we roughhouse sometimes." Boys will be boys. The social worker had believed him, or hadn't cared enough to dig deeper. Either way, Jim had stayed, and the beatings had gotten worse because now his father was angry about the scrutiny. "So what do I do?" Martha stood, crossed to where Jim was leaning against the wall, put a hand on his arm. "You do what your heart's telling you, but you be smart about it, because if you're thinking what I think you're thinking, you're about to go to war with a system that doesn't like being challenged. I can't just hand her back to someone who hurts her." "I know. She almost died tonight, Martha. 3 more minutes on that road and she'd be gone." "I know. So I keep her, at least until I know she'll be safe." Martha's eyes searched his face. "You understand what you're saying? That's kidnapping, Jim. Doesn't matter your intentions. You keep her without legal authority, they'll come after you. Let them. You could lose everything. Then I lose everything." He looked at Emma, small and fragile under the quilt. "But I won't lose my soul doing nothing." Martha smiled then, sad but proud. "There's your mother in you. She'd have said the same thing." She went to the kitchenette, came back with a bowl of soup and a sleeve of crackers. "When she wakes up, feed her this, slowly. Her stomach won't be used to proper food if she's been neglected." "Okay." I brought clothes from the lost and found box. Nothing perfect, but better than a wet dress. "Thank you." Martha paused at the door. "Jim, one more thing." "Yeah? You're gonna love this child. Maybe already do, just don't know it yet. And when you love someone, losing them destroys you. So before you go any further, ask yourself if you're ready for that. Because once you open that door, there's no closing it again." She left before he could answer. Jim sat in the chair by the bed and watched Emma sleep. Outside, the storm was easing. Snow still fell, but softer now. Gentler. The kind that made the world look clean instead of dangerous. He thought about Martha's question. Was he ready to love someone? Ready to be destroyed if he lost them? Probably not. But looking at this small girl who'd trusted him enough to fall asleep in his truck, who'd asked if he was an angel, who'd survived things no child should survive, Jim realized something. Ready or not, didn't matter. He was already in. Emma woke at dawn. Jim had dozed off in the chair, his body at an angle that was going to make his back scream later. The sound of her stirring brought him alert instantly. She sat up slowly, confused, looked around at the unfamiliar room. Her hand went to Lucky, checking that the bunny was still there. "Morning," Jim said quietly. She turned toward his voice. For a moment, her eyes were wide with fear. Then recognition settled in, and her shoulders relaxed slightly. "Where are we?" "Brennan Lodge, the one from your picture. You're safe here." Emma looked down at herself. Someone had changed her clothes while she slept. She now wore sweatpants and a t-shirt several sizes too big, rolled at the cuffs. The pink dress was gone. "Miss Martha did that," Jim explained. You were soaked through. She didn't want you getting sick. Miss Martha's here? Yeah, you'll see her at breakfast. You hungry? Emma nodded. Okay, let's get you fed. He heated the soup Martha had left, brought it to her with crackers and a glass of milk. Emma ate slowly, carefully, like she was afraid of doing it wrong. Jim watched from the kitchenette, making himself coffee, giving her space. When she was halfway through the bowl, she looked up. Mr. Jim? Just Jim? Jim, are you going to take me back to Aunt Sharon today? The question was calm, resigned, like she'd already accepted that good things were temporary. Jim set his coffee down, came over and sat on the other bed facing her. Do you want to go back? No. Then you're not going, not today. What about tomorrow? Let's not worry about tomorrow yet. Let's just worry about today, okay? She studied him with those two old eyes. Grown-ups always say that, but tomorrow always comes. Yeah, it does, but sometimes if we take care of today good enough, tomorrow gets a little easier. Emma seemed to consider this. Then she went back to her soup. They sat in comfortable silence while she finished eating. When the bowl was empty, she set it aside and looked at Jim again. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you stop, for me I mean, on the road? Jim thought about how to answer that, decided on the truth. Because a long time ago, I was in trouble and nobody stopped for me. I always wondered what my life would have been like if someone had. What kind of trouble? The kind where the person supposed to take care of you does the opposite. Understanding flickered in her eyes. Your daddy? Yeah. Did he hit you? Sometimes. Did you run away? Once, when I was 8, got about 2 miles before a cop found me and brought me back. What happened? My dad said I was just acting out. That boys do that, and the cop believed him. Emma was quiet for a moment, then, I'm sorry nobody stopped for you. Jim's chest went tight. Me too, kiddo, but maybe that's why I stopped for you, so you wouldn't have to be sorry about the same thing. She nodded slowly, then she scooted to the edge of the bed, stood up and walked over to where Jim was sitting. Without saying anything, she climbed up next to him and leaned against his side. Jim froze, didn't know what to do with his hands, didn't know if he was allowed to hug back, didn't know the rules. Emma solved the problem by wrapping her small arms around his middle and holding on. So Jim did the only thing that made sense. He put his arm around her shoulders and held her back. They sat like that while the sun came up outside and the motel started waking around them. The sound of doors opening, engines starting, people beginning their days. And Jim Brennan, who'd spent 48 years keeping everyone at arm's length, learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone in. The first week passed in a blur of small moments that felt huge. Day 1. Jim tried to cook breakfast, burn the eggs, charred the toast, set off the smoke alarm. Emma giggled behind her hand the first time he'd heard her laugh, and the sound was worth every ruined meal he'd ever make. Day 2. He took her shopping, stood awkward and lost in the girls' section at Target, while Emma picked out clothes with the careful deliberation of someone who'd never had choices before. The saleswoman had smiled at them. First time shopping for your daughter? Jim had almost corrected her, but Emma had looked up at him with hope in her eyes, so he just said, yeah, first time. Day 3. Emma drew pictures while Jim worked through paperwork at the small table. Her tongue poked out when she concentrated. She used every crayon in the box Martha had bought. At one point, she held up a drawing of 2 stick figures holding hands. That's you and me, she said. Jim had to look away before she saw his eyes water. Day 4. Nightmare. Emma woke screaming about closets and darkness and hands that grabbed too hard. Jim had been on her in seconds, sitting on the edge of her bed, one hand on her back while she sobbed into Lucky's fur. You're safe, he kept saying. I promise. You're safe. Eventually, her breathing slowed and she fell back asleep with his hand still on her shoulder. He stayed there until dawn. Day 5. They found a rhythm. Breakfast at 7. She'd watch cartoons while he made calls and answered emails. Lunch at noon, afternoon walks if the weather allowed. She liked to hold his hand when they walked. Made him feel 10 feet tall and terrified at the same time. Dinner at 6, bath at 7, stories at 8, lights out by 9. For the first time in his adult life, Jim's world revolved around someone else's schedule, someone else's needs, Someone else's small questions and smaller hands and the weight of responsibility that was somehow lighter than any corporate merger he'd ever navigated. Day 6, Emma was drawing again, this time with unusual focus. When Jim asked what she was making, she got quiet. Can I show you something? Of course, Ipami. She went to her suitcase, dug around inside Lucky's stuffing, which apparently had more hiding spots than it should, pulled out an envelope. Mommy gave me this before she went to heaven. She said to give it to whoever took care of me. Jim's hands were shaking when he took it. The envelope was addressed in careful handwriting. To whoever is reading this. He opened it slowly. The letter inside was dated February 14th, the day Caroline had died, based on what Emma had said. Jim read it once, then again, then a third time because his brain kept rejecting the words. To whoever is reading this, if my Emma is with you, it means I'm gone and Sharon failed her. I knew my sister wouldn't step up, knew she'd drink and rage and take her pain out on an innocent child, but she was blood, and the courts like blood, so I had no choice. But I prayed someone would see Emma, really see her, the way Martha saw me. Emma is my heart. She's kind when the world is cruel, gentle when the world is hard. She loves drawing and pancakes and stories where everyone lives happily ever after. She's scared of loud noises, flinches when people move too fast. That's my fault. I let Sharon around us too much when I was sick. Didn't protect her like I should have. Please be patient with her. She's been through so much already. If you're reading this, you stopped. You saw her. You cared enough to help. That means you have a good heart. I'm trusting you with her because you're the angel I prayed for. Tell her I love her every day. Tell her she didn't make me sick. Tell her she was the best thing that ever happened to me. Thank you for being what I couldn't be. Alive. With hope and gratitude, Carolyn Sullivan Jim read the last line again. With hope and gratitude, like she'd known, like she'd seen this coming, like she'd trusted the universe to send someone exactly when Emma needed them most. He looked up. Emma was watching him with those serious eyes. Are you sad about Mommy too? She asked. Jim's voice came out rough. Yeah, kiddo, and honored. She trusted me with you. Do you think you can do it? Take care of me? He could have lied, could have said something confident and certain, but Emma had lived through enough lies. I don't know, he said honestly. I've never been a dad, don't really know how, but I'm going to try my hardest. Emma nodded slowly. Mommy said that's all you can do. Try your hardest and hope it's enough. Your mommy was a smart lady. She was the best. I wish I'd known her better. Me too, but maybe she sent you to me, like the angel in the snow. Jim pulled her into a hug, let her burrow into his chest, felt the fragile weight of her trust and the crushing responsibility of not letting her down. Maybe she did, he whispered into her hair. Maybe she did. Day 9 shattered everything. Jim was in the office with Martha, going over supply orders and trying to figure out how to explain Emma's presence to anyone who asked. They'd been lucky so far. The motel wasn't full, and the guests they did have were the kind who minded their own business. But luck runs out. The door opened with enough force to rattle the bells. A woman stormed in, 40 years old, bleached blonde hair growing out dark at the roots, makeup applied with an unsteady hand. She reeked of cigarettes and something sharper, gin maybe, or vodka. Jim knew who she was before she opened her mouth. Where is she? Martha stood up slowly. Can I help you? I said, where is she? Where's Emma? Sharon Crawford, in the flesh, looking exactly like the kind of person who'd throw a child into a snowstorm. Jim stepped out from behind the desk. Who are you? Sharon's eyes narrowed. I'm her aunt, her legal guardian, and you're the son of a bitch who took her. I didn't take her. I found her freezing to death on Highway 36. She ran away. Kids do that. Doesn't give you the right to keep her. She ran away because you hurt her. Sharon laughed, sharp and mean. She tell you that? Emma's dramatic, always making up stories to get attention. Just like her mother. Martha's voice went cold. Don't you dare talk about Caroline that way. Caroline's dead. Doesn't matter what I say about her now. Jim's fists clenched. He forced himself to breathe. Emma's not going back to you. The hell she's not. Sharon pulled papers from her purse, slapped them on the desk. Legal guardianship, Signed by a judge. She's mine. Jim picked up the papers, read them. His stomach sank. They were legitimate. Guardianship granted to Sharon Crawford, February 2024. Signed and notarized, completely legal. I don't care what these say. I'm not handing over a child to someone who abuses her. Abuses? Sharon's voice pitched higher. I gave her a home, fed her, clothed her, and this is the thanks I get? Her running away and some rich asshole playing savior? I saw the bruises. She's clumsy, falls all the time. Handprint-shaped bruises. I grabbed her arm once. She was running into traffic. What was I supposed to do, let her get hit? The lies came smooth and practiced. Jim recognized them. His father had told the same ones. You locked her in a closet. Time out, kids need discipline. You threw her out in a blizzard. Sharon's face changed, calculation replacing anger. Prove it. Go ahead. Prove any of it. It's my word against a 5-year-old's. Jim wanted to hit something. Someone. Instead, he pulled out his phone. What are you doing? Sharon demanded. Calling the police. Let them sort this out. Fine, call them. They'll tell you the same thing I am. She's legally mine. And unless you can prove abuse, which you can't because there isn't any, they'll make you hand her over. The door opened again. Emma stood in the doorway, drawn by the shouting. She saw Sharon and went white. There you are. Sharon's voice turned syrupy. Fake concern plastered over rage. Baby, you scared me so much. Come here, sweetheart. Let's go home. Emma took a step back, shook her head. Emma, don't be difficult. I don't want to go with you. Sharon's mask slipped. I don't care what you want. I'm your guardian. You go where I say. Emma looked at Jim, terrified, pleading. Jim put himself between them. She's not going anywhere with you. Then I'm calling the cops myself. And when they get here, I'm pressing charges. Kidnapping, child endangerment, whatever sticks. She pulled out her phone, started dialing. Martha grabbed Jim's arm. Don't. She's right. Legally, she can do this. I won't let her take Emma. You don't have a choice. The truth of it hit like a hammer. He had no legal standing, no parental rights, no authority. He was just a man who'd picked up a child on the side of the road. And Sharon was her legal guardian. The law was on her side. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Emma started crying, silent tears down her cheeks. She walked to Jim, grabbed his hand. You promised, she whispered. You said I was safe. Jim knelt down, looked her in the eyes. You are safe. I'm not giving up. I promise you, Emma. I'm not giving up. But even as he said it, he felt her slipping away. The police came. 2 officers, professional and polite. They listened to both sides, checked Sharon's paperwork, looked at Emma's bruises, which had faded enough to be questionable. The senior officer, a guy named Rodriguez with tired eyes and a wedding ring, pulled Jim aside. Look, I get it. You're trying to help, but she's got legal custody and you don't. She abuses that little girl. Maybe, probably, but I can't act on maybe. I need proof, recent injuries, witnesses, something concrete. What about Emma's testimony? She's 5, and she's the niece. Courts don't put a lot of weight on that unless there's corroboration. So Sharon just gets to take her back to a place where she's hurt and scared? Rodriguez sighed. I'll file a report with Child Services. They'll investigate, but that takes time. How much time? Weeks, maybe months. Emma doesn't have that kind of time. Then lawyer up, file for emergency custody, but until then, legally, I have to return the child to her guardian. Jim felt something break inside him. There has to be another way. There isn't. I'm sorry. Sharon stood by the police car, smirking, victorious. Emma clung to Jim's legs, sobbing now, not quiet, full body shaking, desperate sobs. Please don't make me go. Please. I'll be good. I promise I'll be good. The same words she'd said in the snow, the same plea that had brought Jim to his knees. Martha was crying. Jim could see her through the office window. Hand over her mouth, Rodriguez put his hand on Jim's shoulder. You have to let her go. I can't. You have to, or I'll have to arrest you, and that won't help her at all. The logic was sound. The reality was unbearable. Jim knelt down, pulled Emma into a hug so tight he was afraid he'd break her. She grabbed fistfuls of his shirt and held on. "Listen to me," he said into her ear. "I'm going to fix this. I'm going to fight for you, but right now you have to go with them. Just for a little while, until I can make this right. You promised I was safe." "You are. I promise you are. This isn't over." "What if she hurts me again?" Jim pulled back, looked her in the eyes. "If she does, you call me. Here." He pressed a card into her hand, his business card with his cell number. "You keep this hidden, and if you need me, you call. Day or night, I'll come. I'll always come." Emma nodded, tears streaming, clutching the card like a lifeline. Rodriguez gently separated them, led Emma toward the police car where Sharon waited. Emma looked back over her shoulder. "You promised," she said again. Not accusing, just reminding. "I know," Jim said, "and I keep my promises." She got in the car, the door closed. Sharon shot Jim one last triumphant look before climbing in beside her. The car pulled away. Jim stood in the parking lot, snow starting to fall again, watching until the taillights disappeared. Martha came out, put her arm around him. "What do I do?" he asked. "You fight." "How?" "However you have to." They stood there while the snow fell, while the world kept turning, while somewhere in that police car, a little girl who trusted him was learning that promises break. Jim pulled out his phone, started making calls, lawyers, social workers, anyone who might help, because he'd made a promise. And a Brennan doesn't quit, even when the whole system is rigged against them, even when the odds are impossible, even when giving up would be easier. A Brennan doesn't quit. His mother had taught him that, and Emma Gray Sullivan was about to teach him what it meant to fight for someone you love, whether he was ready or not. The 2 weeks after they took Emma were the longest of Jim's life. He'd thought he understood loneliness. 48 years of it had taught him what empty felt like. The silent house, the cold bed, the meals eaten alone while staring at a phone that never rang with anyone who mattered. But he'd been wrong. That wasn't loneliness. That was just solitude. Loneliness was knowing exactly where the missing piece was and being powerless to bring it home. The motel room felt wrong without her. Too quiet, too clean. No crayons scattered across the table. No small shoes by the door. No stuffed bunny on the pillow. Just emptiness and the ghost of a child's laughter that Jim heard in every corner. Martha found him there on day 3, sitting in the chair where he'd kept watch that first night, staring at nothing. "You eating?" she asked. "When I remember." "Sleeping?" "Not much." She set a plate down in front of him, sandwich and chips, the simple kind of care that meant everything. "Jim, you can't help her if you fall apart." "I'm not falling apart." "Honey, I've known you since you were 16. I know what falling apart looks like on you." He picked up the sandwich, took a bite because Martha was watching. It tasted like cardboard, but he ate it anyway. "I hired a lawyer," he said, "Rebecca Wu, family law specialist. She says I have a case, but it's weak." "Why weak?" "Because I'm nobody to Emma. Not family, not a foster parent, just a guy who found her on the road." "You're more than that." "Tell it to the courts. Rebecca says judges like stability, blood relations, established connections. I'm 0 for 3. Martha sat down across from him. "So what's the plan?" "File for emergency custody, claim abuse, hope the investigation finds something before Sharon does permanent damage." "That could take months." "I know." "And in the meantime?" Jim's jaw tightened. "In the meantime, I watch, I wait, and I pray Sharon screws up bad enough that even the system can't ignore it." "That's not much of a plan." "It's all I've got." Martha was quiet for a moment. Then she reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. "Your mother would be proud of you. You know that, right?" Jim's throat went tight. "I don't know about that." "I do. She always said the measure of a man isn't what he builds. It's who he protects when there's nothing in it for him." "There's everything in it for me, Martha. Emma makes me feel like I matter. Like my life means something beyond profit margins and property values." "Then fight for her." "I am." "No, I mean really fight. Not just lawyers and paperwork. Get your hands dirty. Because that woman who has Emma, she's not playing fair. And if you want to win, you can't either." Jim looked at Martha, saw something fierce and protective in her eyes, something that reminded him of his mother standing up to his father the few times she'd found the courage. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying Sharon Crawford is a drunk who can't keep her life together. People like that always slip up, always. You just need to be there when she does." "You mean follow her?" "I mean make sure that little girl has someone watching out for her even when the system isn't." It was technically stalking. Definitely questionable. Probably illegal. Jim didn't care. "Okay," he said. "Okay." Martha squeezed his hand. "That's my boy." Sharon lived in a trailer park 40 minutes outside Denver. The kind of place where people minded their own business because everyone had something to hide. Mobile homes in varying states of decay, cars on blocks, chain-link fences holding in dogs that barked at everything. Jim parked down the road where he could see Sharon's trailer without being obvious. A faded single-wide with a sagging porch and sheets over the windows instead of curtains. Emma's pink suitcase sat by the door like trash waiting to be taken out. He'd been there 3 days, watching, waiting, learning Sharon's patterns. She left for work at 2 p.m., some kind of retail job based on the uniform, though she never made it on time. She'd stumble out, usually hungover, and drive away in a rusted Civic that belched smoke. Emma didn't go with her. Didn't go anywhere, far as Jim could tell. Just stayed inside that trailer, alone from 2 until Sharon got back around 11, 9 hours. A 5-year-old left alone for 9 hours. Jim called Rebecca Wu. "If I can prove she's leaving Emma unsupervised, does that help?" "Depends. How old is the child?" 5. "Then yes, absolutely. That's neglect. Get proof and I can file an emergency motion." "What kind of proof?" "Photos, video, time-stamped, multiple instances showing a pattern." Jim hung up and pulled out his phone, started documenting everything. Day 4. Sharon left at 1:47 p.m. Didn't return until 11:23 p.m. Baham, 9 hours and 36 minutes. Jim had photos of the empty driveway, the dark windows, the curtain that never moved. Day 5. Same pattern. This time Sharon came home with a man. They were loud getting out of the car, laughing the way drunk people laugh. Too loud, too sharp. The trailer door slammed. Lights went on. Through the thin walls, Jim could hear Sharon's voice raised. Then Emma's. Small, frightened. Then a sound that made his blood freeze. A slap. Emma crying. Sharon yelling about messes and stupidity. And why can't you just be good? Jim's hand went to the door handle. Every muscle in his body screamed to burst in there, to grab Emma and run. To hell with the law. To hell with the consequences. Martha's voice in his head stopped him. "You can't help her if you're in jail." He forced himself to stay, to document, to build a case even as his heart shattered listening to that child cry. The man left around midnight. Sharon's light went off at 12:30. Jim sat in his truck until dawn, making sure Emma was okay. Making sure the trailer didn't burn down or worse. When the sun came up, he drove back to the motel, showed Martha and Rebecca the evidence. Photos, timestamps, audio recordings of the abuse through the walls. Rebecca looked grim. "This is good, terrible but legally good. I can file an emergency motion today." "How long until we get a hearing?" 48 hours, maybe 72. 2 more days, maybe 3. Emma could survive that. She had to. Day 7 brought the storm. Jim was in position, same spot, watching the trailer. Sharon had left for work. Emma was alone inside. Everything normal by the twisted standards of the last week. Then Sharon's car came back. 2 hours early, she got out, stumbling, fired, Jim guessed. Came home drunk and angry and looking for someone to blame. The trailer door slammed open. Sharon's voice carried across the yard. "Emma, get out here!" Jim's pulse spiked. He grabbed his phone, started recording video. Through the window, he could see movement. Sharon dragging Emma into view. The little girl's face was terrified. "I lost my job because of you. I didn't do anything. You're always doing something, always needing something, food and clothes and attention. I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't pay the bills." Sharon's hand flew. The slap echoed. Emma went down. Jim was out of the truck before his brain caught up, running across the road, up the driveway. Every vow to stay calm, stay legal, stay smart evaporating in the face of that child's pain. He didn't knock, just opened the door and walked in. Sharon spun around. What the hell? Emma looked up from the floor. Blood trickled from her nose. Her eyes went wide. Jim? Get away from her, Jim said. His voice was level, but his hands were shaking with rage. Sharon's face twisted. This is my house. Get out or I'm calling the cops. Good. Call them. I'd love to explain how I just watched you hit a 5-year-old. She's my niece. I can discipline her however I want. That's not discipline. That's abuse. Sharon lunged for her phone. Jim moved faster, grabbed it out of her hand. She swung at him. He caught her wrist. Touch me again and I'll have you arrested for assault, he said quietly. You're in my house, and you're drunk at 3 in the afternoon with the child in your care. Emma scrambled up, ran to Jim, grabbed his leg. He put a protective hand on her shoulder. Sharon laughed, mean and jagged. You think you're saving her? You're nobody. The court's already told you that. She's mine. Not anymore. You can't just take her. Watch me. He pulled out his phone, dialed 911, put it on speaker. 911, what's your emergency? I'm at 47 Pinecrest Mobile Home Park. I need police and child protective services. There's a 5-year-old child who's been physically abused by her guardian. Sharon's face went white, then red. Then she started screaming obscenities that would have made a sailor blush. The operator stayed calm. Sir, is the child in immediate danger? Jim looked at Emma, blood on her face, bruises forming on her arm, terror in her eyes. She was. She's with me now. Are you family? No, but I'm the one who reported the abuse 2 weeks ago and was ignored. Stay on the line. Officers are on the way. Sharon tried to grab Emma. Jim blocked her, kept himself between them. She was screaming now, calling him every name in the book, threatening lawsuits, threatening violence. Jim just stood there, solid, unmovable. Emma pressed against his back. When the sirens came, Sharon tried to play victim, tried to claim Jim had broken in, that she was defending herself, that Emma's injuries were from falling. But the officers who responded were the same ones from before, Rodriguez and his partner. They took one look at the scene and their expressions hardened. Mr. Brennan, Rodriguez said carefully, tell me what happened. So Jim did, showed the video on his phone, the slap, Emma going down, showed the week of documentation, the photos of Sharon leaving Emma alone, the timestamps, the recordings. Rodriguez watched it all. His jaw got tighter with every second. When the video ended, he turned to Sharon. Ma'am, I need you to step outside. This is my home. Now, ma'am. Something in his tone made Sharon comply. She went, still cursing, still threatening. Rodriguez's partner called for backup, for CPS, for a supervisor. Rodriguez knelt down to Emma's level. Hey, sweetheart, remember me? Emma nodded. Can you tell me what happened to your nose? Emma looked at Jim. He nodded. It's okay. Tell the truth. Aunt Sharon hit me, Emma said quietly. She said I made her lose her job, but I didn't do anything. I was just drawing. Has she hit you before? Sometimes, when she drinks, and she locks me in the closet when I'm bad. You're not bad, Emma, Jim said, his voice rough. Rodriguez stood, pulled Jim aside while his partner stayed with Emma. This changes things, he said quietly. That video, the evidence, that's not borderline. That's clear abuse. So what happens now? CPS will take custody, emergency removal. Sharon will be arrested. And Emma goes into the system. Foster care until a judge decides permanent placement. Jim's stomach dropped. Foster care? With strangers? Unless you can file for emergency guardianship tonight with this evidence. Can I do that? Talk to your lawyer. But yeah, with what you've got, you have got a shot. More sirens, more cars. The scene turned into controlled chaos. Social workers, paramedics to check Emma's injuries. Sharon being put in handcuffs, still screaming. Through it all, Emma held Jim's hand, wouldn't let go. When they tried to separate them, she panicked. No, I want to stay with Jim. The social worker, a tired-looking woman named Linda Patterson, knelt down. Honey, I know you're scared, but we need to get you checked out by a doctor. Then we'll figure out where you're going to stay. I want to stay with Jim, Emma said again. Not begging, just stating a fact. Linda looked at Jim. Are you filing for custody? Yes. Tonight. Then I can place her with you temporarily, pending the court's approval. But, Mr. Brennan, if the judge denies your petition, she goes into foster care. You understand that? I understand. And you're prepared to care for her full-time? Jim looked at Emma, small and brave and holding his hand like he was the only solid thing in a tilting world. I'm prepared to do whatever it takes. Linda made a note on her clipboard. Okay, she's yours for now. Don't leave the state, don't miss any court appearances, and treat her like she's made of glass because that's what the judge is going to be looking for. Yes, ma'am. She stood, started gathering paperwork. The paramedics cleaned Emma's face, checked her nose. Not broken, they said, just bloody. They documented the bruises, took photos for evidence. Sharon was loaded into a police car. As they drove her away, she caught Jim's eye through the window. The look she gave him was pure hatred. He didn't care. All that mattered was the small hand in his and the terrified child who just learned that sometimes the good guys do win. The emergency custody hearing happened 3 days later. Jim sat at a table with Rebecca Wu, trying not to throw up from nerves. Emma was in the hall with Martha, coloring to pass the time. The courtroom was small, family court, not criminal, meant to be less intimidating, but Jim's heart still pounded like he was on trial for murder. Judge Rodriguez presided. No relation to the officer. She was 58, gray hair pulled into a tight bun, reading glasses perched on her nose. She'd seen it all in 20 years on the bench. Broken families, failed systems, children caught in the crossfire of adult failures. Mr. Brennan, she said, looking over his petition, you're seeking emergency custody of Emma Grace Sullivan, is that correct? Jim stood. Yes, Your Honor. On what grounds? Rebecca spoke up. Physical abuse and neglect by her current guardian, Sharon Crawford. We have video evidence, photographic documentation, and witness testimony. I've reviewed your filing. The evidence is compelling, but I have concerns. Jim's stomach dropped. Judge Rodriguez continued, you have no relation to this child, no prior experience as a parent or guardian. You've known her for less than a month. Why should I grant you custody instead of placing her in the foster system with trained professionals? Rebecca started to answer, but Jim cut her off. Your Honor, can I speak? The judge looked surprised. Go ahead, Mr. Brennan. Jim took a breath. 48 years of keeping his emotions locked down. Time to let them out. You're right, I'm not family. I've never been a dad. A month ago, I didn't know Emma existed, but I know what it's like to be her. The courtroom went quiet. When I was 8, my father locked me outside in the snow, punishment for spilling his drink. I knelt on that porch for 2 hours, begging to be let back in. Nobody came. Nobody stopped. Nobody cared. Judge Rodriguez's expression softened. When I was 10, a teacher noticed bruises, called social services. They came to my house. My father lied, charmed them. They left, and I stayed. The beatings got worse. Jim's voice cracked, but he kept going. I survived because eventually my mother found the courage to leave him. But the damage was done. I spent 48 years building walls so high nobody could hurt me again. And you know what? It worked. I was safe. I was successful. And I was completely alone. He looked toward the door where Emma was waiting. Then I found her, in the snow, barefoot, freezing, saying the exact same words I'd said 40 years ago. Please don't make me go back. Mr. Brennan, the judge said gently, I stopped because somebody should have stopped for me. I took her because somebody should have taken me. And I'm fighting for her because nobody fought for me. That's why I should have custody, Your Honor. Not because I'm qualified, but because I understand what she needs. Safety, stability, someone who sees her, really sees her, and doesn't look away. Silence. Judge Rodriguez removed her glasses, rubbed her eyes. When she looked up, Jim could have sworn he saw tears. Ms. Wu, call your first witness. Rebecca called Linda Patterson. The social worker testified about the condition she'd found Emma in. The bruises, the bloody nose, the terror in her eyes, the recordings of Sharon's abuse. Then she said something that changed everything. Your Honor, in 15 years of social work, I've seen a lot of placements. Good ones, bad ones. This is special. Emma Grace Sullivan has been with Mr. Brennan for 3 days since we removed her from Sharon Crawford. In that time, she's eaten properly, slept through the night, started smiling again. She feels safe with him. That's not something you can fake. Objection, the public defender assigned to Sharon called out. Hearsay. Overruled, Judge Rodriguez said. Ms. Patterson is an expert witness. Continue. Linda looked at Jim. Emma talks about him constantly. Jim taught me how to braid hair. Jim makes funny voices when he reads. Jim says I'm not bad, I'm just sad sometimes. She trusts him. And in my professional opinion, removing her from his care now would constitute additional trauma. The public defender tried to argue that Sharon deserved a chance to rehabilitate. That family should stay together. That blood mattered. Rebecca demolished those arguments with the video, the evidence, the pattern of abuse. When it was over, Judge Rodriguez asked to speak to Emma. Bring her in. Martha brought her. Emma walked in holding Martha's hand, eyes wide, clutching Lucky. She was wearing a yellow dress Martha had bought. Her hair was braided. The bruises had faded to yellow-green. Hello, Emma, the judge said gently. My name is Judge Rodriguez. Do you know why you're here? Emma nodded. To see if I can stay with Jim. That's right. Can you tell me what it's like living with Jim? Emma thought about it seriously. Safe. Safe how? He doesn't yell. He doesn't hit. He makes breakfast even when he burns it. He reads me stories every night. And when I have bad dreams, he sits with me until I'm not scared anymore. Do you want to stay with him? More than anything. Why? Emma's voice went quiet. Because he found me in the snow, and he keeps finding me, even when I'm lost. Judge Rodriguez wrote something down. Thank you, Emma. You can go back with Miss Martha now. After Emma left, the judge sat in silence for a long moment, reading papers, thinking. The courtroom held its breath. Finally, she spoke. I've read the evidence, heard the testimony, spoken with the child, and I'm prepared to rule. Jim's heart stopped. Sharon Crawford will be charged with child abuse and neglect. Her guardianship is hereby terminated. She will have no contact with Emma Sullivan pending criminal proceedings. Relief crashed over Jim like a wave. As for custody, Mr. Brennan, I'm granting you temporary emergency guardianship, 3 months, during which time you will undergo a home study, background check, parenting classes, and regular supervision from Child Protective Services. Not permanent, but something. If at the end of 3 months you've met all requirements and Emma continues to thrive in your care, we'll reconvene to discuss permanent guardianship or adoption. Jim's eyes burned. Thank you, Your Honor. Don't thank me yet. This is the easy part. Being a parent, that's hard, especially for a child who's been through trauma. Are you ready for that? No, Jim said honestly, but I'm going to try anyway. Judge Rodriguez smiled, a real smile, warm and kind. Good answer, court is adjourned. The gavel fell. Jim stood there shaking as Rebecca hugged him, and Martha cried, and somewhere in the hall, Emma was waiting to hear that she was coming home. Not to a motel room, not to a temporary placement. Home. The 3 months passed in a blur of ordinary miracles. Jim sold his empty house in Denver, bought a small home near the original Brennan Lodge. 3 bedrooms, a yard, a porch. The kind of place meant for families. Emma picked out her room, painted the walls pink, helped Jim assemble furniture from IKEA while they both laughed at the confusing instructions. Put up shelves for her drawings, a special shelf just for Lucky. They developed routines. Pancakes on Saturday mornings. Jim learned Caroline's recipe from notes Martha had saved. They were never as good as Emma remembered her mother's being, but Emma ate them anyway and said they were perfect. Church on Sundays with Father Tom. Jim wasn't religious, but Emma liked the singing, and Father Tom had become a friend. Someone to talk to when the parenting got hard. Therapy twice a week with Dr. Sarah Chen. Emma talked about her mother, about Sharon, about the fear that Jim would leave her too. Slowly, session by session, the nightmares decreased. The flinching stopped. The smiles came easier. Jim went to therapy too. Had to. It was required for the home study, but he would have gone anyway. 48 years of trauma didn't heal overnight. Dr. Chen helped him understand that being afraid of becoming his father was actually proof he wouldn't. That awareness was the difference. The home study was invasive and thorough, social workers inspecting every corner of his life. Financial records, background checks, references. They interviewed Martha, Father Tom, Emma's teachers at the elementary school where Jim had enrolled her. Everyone said the same thing. Emma was thriving, happy, healing. And Jim Brennan had finally found something more important than success. He'd found purpose. There were hard days, days when Emma melted down over something small because the trauma found new ways to surface. Days when Jim didn't know what to do and felt like he was failing. Days when he wondered if the judge had made a mistake. But there were more good days. Days when Emma laughed at his terrible jokes. Days when she drew pictures of their family. Stick figures holding hands under a smiling sun. Days when she called him Jim, then stopped and looked at him hopefully. Can I call you something else? Like what? I don't know. Something more than Jim, but less than Mister. What do you want to call me? She thought about it. What did you call your dad? I called him Sir, but I don't want that. What about Papa? Jim's throat went tight. Papa works, if you want. Okay, Papa it is. She said it casual, like it wasn't the most important word Jim had ever heard, like it didn't fundamentally change who he was. But it did. Papa. He was someone's papa now. The final hearing came on a cold day in early spring, 3 months exactly from the emergency order. This time Jim wasn't nervous. He'd done everything right, met every requirement, passed every inspection. Emma was happy, healthy, doing well in school. The evidence was overwhelming. Judge Rodriguez reviewed the case quickly. Mr. Brennan, the home study is exemplary. Emma's therapy reports are excellent. Her teachers speak highly of her progress. CPS recommends permanent placement. Jim nodded. Before I rule, I'd like to ask Emma one more question. Emma came in, bigger now somehow, more confident. She wore the yellow dress again. Good luck, she'd said that morning. Emma, the judge said, do you still want to live with Mr. Brennan? Yes. And how would you feel if I said you could stay with him forever? Not just for now, but always? Emma's eyes went huge. Really? Forever, forever? If that's what you want. Emma looked at Jim, her whole face lit up. Yes, please. Forever. Judge Rodriguez smiled. Then let's make it official. She signed papers, stamped them, handed them to Rebecca. James Brennan, I'm granting you full permanent guardianship of Emma Grace Sullivan. She is legally your daughter in all ways except biology. Congratulations. The courtroom erupted, Martha sobbing, Father Tom cheering, Linda Patterson wiping her eyes. Emma ran to Jim. He picked her up, held her tight, and for the first time in his life, felt complete. You're stuck with me now, kiddo, he whispered. Good, she whispered back. I don't want to be anywhere else. Outside the courthouse, snow was starting to fall, soft and gentle, beautiful instead of dangerous. Martha took a photo, Jim and Emma on the courthouse steps, his arm around her shoulders, her hand holding his, both of them smiling like the world had just been remade. Send me that, Jim said. Why? I'm framing it, right next to the photo of Caroline, because that's what this was. A circle completing. Caroline's prayer answered, her daughter saved, her trust honored. Emma looked up at the snow. It's pretty now. Yeah. When I was lost, the snow was scary, but now it's just snow. That's good, Emma. That means you're healing. Are you healing too, Papa? The words still hit him like lightning. Yeah, kiddo, I think I am. 1 year later, spring arrived early. Jim stood in front of a building that used to be a warehouse. Now it was something new, something better. The sign above the door read Caroline's Place, a shelter for single mothers and their children. 12 units, on-site childcare, job training, counseling, all the things Caroline had needed and never got. All the things that might have saved her if they'd existed. Jim had poured money into it, not from obligation, from love. This was Caroline's legacy, her gift. She'd given him Emma. He'd give other mothers what she never had, a chance. Emma stood beside him, now 7 years old, wearing a blue dress and her hair in the braids Jim had finally mastered. She held a pair of oversized scissors, ready to cut the ribbon. Martha was there. Father Tom, Linda Patterson, Rebecca Wu, Dr. Chen, all the people who'd helped them get here. And families, mothers with children, scared, hopeful, looking for the same thing Emma had been looking for that night in the snow, someone who would stop. Emma cut the ribbon. The small crowd clapped. Families moved inside to see their new homes. Jim watched them go, mothers crying with relief, children running to pick out bedrooms. New beginnings everywhere. Mommy would have loved this, Emma said quietly. Yeah, she would. Do you think she knows about us? Jim knelt down to her level. I think she knew before we did. I think she sent you to me. Like an angel. Exactly like an angel. Emma hugged him. He hugged back. They stayed like that while the spring sun warmed them and the world kept turning, and somewhere Caroline Sullivan was smiling. That night, back at their house, Jim tucked Emma into bed. Same routine they'd had for a year now. Story, prayers, good night. But tonight, Emma had a question. Papa? Yeah, sweetheart? Can I ask you something big? Always. Would you want to adopt me, like really adopt me, so I'm Emma Brennan for real? Jim's heart stopped, started, overflowed. Is that what you want? More than anything, because you're my family now, and I want everyone to know. Jim sat on the edge of her bed, took her hand. Emma Grace Sullivan Brennan. How's that sound? Perfect. Then let's do it. We'll call Rebecca tomorrow. Make it official. Emma threw her arms around his neck. I love you, Papa. I love you too, sweetheart. More than I knew I could love anyone. She settled back under the covers. Clutched Lucky. Smiled that sleepy smile that meant she felt safe. Papa? Thank you for stopping. That night in the snow. Jim's eyes burned. Thank you for trusting me too. She fell asleep smiling. Jim sat there for a while watching her breathe, thinking about the man he used to be. Cold, closed, convinced that walls were the only way to survive. That man was gone, replaced by someone better. Someone who knew that the bravest thing you could do was love someone even when it terrified you, even when you might lose them, even when every instinct screamed to protect yourself. Because love was the opposite of survival. It was living. He stood, turned off the light, left the door cracked like Emma preferred. In the hallway, he passed the wall of photos. Caroline and baby Emma at the lodge, Emma and Jim on the courthouse steps, the whole family at Caroline's place opening. Each one a moment captured, a memory made real. This was his legacy now. Not buildings, not profit, not empire. Family. He walked to his room, looked out the window at the quiet street. Snow had fallen earlier, just an inch, enough to make everything clean and new. Somewhere out there, other children were scared. Other families were broken. Other people were lost in storms. But tomorrow, when the sun came up, Caroline's place would open its doors. Other mothers would find safety. Other children would find hope. Because one man had stopped on a frozen road for a child who needed him, and learned that sometimes the person you save ends up saving you right back. Jim Brennan closed his eyes and slept. For the first time in 48 years, he slept without walls, without fear, without loneliness. He slept like a man who'd finally found his way home. And in the room down the hall, Emma Grace Sullivan, soon-to-be Brennan, slept too, dreaming of angels who looked like ordinary people doing extraordinary things, like stopping, like caring, like loving a broken child until she wasn't broken anymore. The snow melted by morning, but the warmth remained.